Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and hearing a distant rumble. At first, you think it's thunder. But the sound doesn't stop. It grows louder, deeper, stronger. The ground beneath your feet begins to shake. Windows rattle. Car alarms start blaring. Birds suddenly fill the sky, flying in every direction. Then, your phone vibrates. An emergency alert appears. Volcanic activity detected worldwide. You read it twice. Worldwide? That can't be possible. There are more than 1,500 active volcanoes on Earth. Most of them are thousands of kilometers apart. Many have been silent for centuries. Some haven't erupted for tens of thousands of years. The idea that all of them could erupt, at exactly the same moment, seems impossible. But today, the impossible becomes reality. Without warning, every active volcano on Earth erupts. At once. From the Pacific Ring of Fire, to Iceland, to Italy, to Indonesia, to Alaska, to Antarctica, every crater explodes. Within seconds, the sky begins to change. Gigantic columns of ash rise over 30 kilometers into the atmosphere. From space, Earth no longer looks blue. It begins turning gray. Entire mountain ranges explode apart. Rivers of lava race down valleys. Pyroclastic flows, superheated clouds of ash and rock, accelerate at hundreds of kilometers per hour. Nothing can outrun them. Forests ignite instantly. Entire towns disappear beneath ash before evacuation orders can even be issued. Airports close across the globe. Thousands of aircraft already in the sky desperately search for somewhere to land. But volcanic ash is one of the greatest dangers an airplane can face. It melts inside jet engines, causing complete engine failure. Within minutes, global aviation comes to a standstill. Satellites capture unbelievable images. Hundreds, then thousands, of enormous ash clouds rise simultaneously across every continent. Scientists stare at their screens, unable to speak. Nothing in Earth's history compares to what they are witnessing. Then, the first shockwave arrives. Some eruptions are so powerful, their explosions are heard thousands of kilometers away. Windows shatter. Pressure waves circle the planet. Seismographs become overwhelmed. For the first time in recorded history, the Earth seems to roar, everywhere, all at once. People begin fleeing their homes. Highways instantly fill with traffic. Millions try to escape, but no one knows where to go. Because this isn't one volcano, or 10, or 100, it's all of them. Every direction leads toward another eruption. Humanity has never faced a disaster on this scale. And the worst part, the lava, isn't the greatest danger. The real threat is already rising into the sky. Because in just a few hours, the ash from thousands of volcanoes will begin blocking sunlight across the entire planet. And once that happens, Earth itself will begin to change. The first few hours were nothing but chaos. Cities near volcanoes were already gone. Millions of people fled, while emergency services struggled to respond. But the true disaster was no longer happening on the ground. It was happening in the sky. Every volcanic eruption releases enormous amounts of ash, dust, and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. Normally, one major eruption can affect global weather for months. But now, more than 1,000 volcanoes were erupting simultaneously. The amount of ash entering the atmosphere was beyond anything Earth had experienced in human history. Hour by hour, the sky grew darker. The sun became dimmer. At noon, it looked like sunset. Streetlights switched on automatically. Animals became confused. Birds returned to their nests. Night predators began hunting in the middle of the day. Within 48 hours, parts of the world entered complete darkness. Not because the sun had disappeared, but because its light could no longer reach the ground. Scientists gave the phenomenon a terrifying name: volcanic winter. The thick blanket of ash reflected sunlight back into space. Without enough solar energy, Earth began cooling rapidly. Temperatures dropped across every continent. Summer disappeared. In many places, snow began falling, even though it was supposed to be the hottest time of the year. Farmers watched entire fields freeze overnight. Rice, corn, wheat, soybeans, all began dying. Photosynthesis nearly stopped. Plants couldn't survive without sunlight. And if plants disappeared, everything else would follow. Within weeks, the global food chain started collapsing. Livestock had nothing left to eat. Fresh vegetables became almost impossible to grow. Food prices exploded. Supermarket shelves emptied. Governments imposed emergency rationing. Long lines formed outside food distribution centers. Panic buying spread across the world. Meanwhile, breathing became increasingly difficult. The air was filled with microscopic volcanic ash. Every breath carried tiny particles of glass like rock. People developed severe coughing. Hospitals overflowed with patients suffering from lung damage. Those with asthma or respiratory diseases were among the first victims. Doctors wore protective masks day and night. Soon, everyone else did too. Then, acid rain began to fall. Sulfur dioxide released by thousands of volcanoes mixed with water vapor high above the clouds. The result was sulfuric acid. Rain that once nourished forests, now poisoned rivers, destroyed crops, and corroded buildings. Lakes became too acidic for fish to survive. Entire forests slowly turned gray. The natural world was beginning to die. But beneath the oceans, another crisis was unfolding. Ash covered the sea surface. Less sunlight reached marine plants. Phytoplankton, the tiny organisms responsible for producing much of Earth's oxygen, began disappearing. The oceans, which had supported life for hundreds of millions of years, were slowly suffocating. Scientists realized something terrifying. Humanity wasn't facing one disaster. It was facing dozens, all happening at the same time. Darkness, cold, famine, disease, poisoned water, collapsing ecosystems. And according to every computer model, the worst was still ahead. Because the ash cloud continued growing larger every single day. Days turned into weeks, yet the eruptions never stopped. The sky remained black. The sun, once the source of all life, had become nothing more than a faint orange glow behind endless ash. Global temperatures continued falling, 1 degree, then 5, then 10. The cooling spread across every continent. Rivers began freezing. Lakes disappeared beneath thick sheets of ice. Snow covered places that had never seen winter before. Tropical rainforests, once filled with life, fell silent. Without sunlight, plants stopped growing. Without plants, animals began starving. The collapse of Earth's ecosystems accelerated faster than scientists had predicted. Then, the oxygen levels started changing. The tiny organisms floating near the ocean's surface, called phytoplankton, produce a huge portion of the oxygen we breathe. But with sunlight blocked, they began dying by the trillions. Every day, Earth produced less oxygen, and more carbon dioxide. The atmosphere slowly became harder to breathe. Not overnight, but enough for scientists to realize the planet itself was beginning to suffocate. Meanwhile, volcanic ash continued circling the globe. Entire cities disappeared beneath layers of gray dust. Roofs collapsed under the weight. Roads became impassable. Power stations shut down. Solar panels produced almost no electricity. Communication towers failed one after another. The modern world was falling apart. Then, another invisible danger emerged. The ash cloud carried enormous amounts of static electricity. Lightning storms erupted everywhere. Some lasted for hours. Others, for days. The sky flashed constantly. Wildfires ignited even in regions untouched by lava. The contrast was almost impossible to imagine. A freezing planet, consumed by fire. Food had now become the world's most valuable resource. Governments no longer fought over oil, or money, or borders. They fought over farmland, greenhouses, and clean water. Underground shelters expanded across the world. Scientists searched desperately for ways to grow crops without sunlight. Massive artificial farms were built beneath mountains. Powered by nuclear reactors, they became humanity's last hope. But there was one terrifying reality. No underground city could feed 8 billion people. For the first time in modern history, humanity understood that extinction was no longer science fiction. It had become a mathematical possibility. And then, scientists delivered their darkest prediction. If every volcano continued erupting, the volcanic winter could last, not months, but years. maybe even decades. A world without blue skies, without warm summers, without thriving forests, without the civilization humanity had spent thousands of years building. Earth would survive, but human civilization might not. Months passed. Eventually, the eruptions began to slow. One by one, the volcanoes fell silent. The lava cooled, the earthquakes became weaker. For the first time, Earth stopped shaking, but when the ash finally settled, humanity looked upon a planet it barely recognized. Entire mountain ranges had changed shape. New islands had risen from the sea. Old coastlines had vanished forever. Thousands of cities were buried beneath meters of volcanic ash. The blue sky was still hidden behind a gray haze. Sunlight slowly returned, but it was weaker than before. Temperatures remained far below normal. Harvests were almost impossible. Millions depended on underground farms, and the last remaining food reserves. The world economy no longer existed. Countries no longer competed, they cooperated, because survival had become humanity's only mission. Scientists estimated it would take decades for Earth's climate to recover. Forests would have to grow again. Oceans would need time to heal. Entire ecosystems would have to begin from the very beginning. Human civilization survived, but it would never be the same. Future generations would read about the world before the eruptions. A world with blue skies, green forests, and warm summers. To them, it would sound like a fairy tale, because the Earth they inherited was colder, darker, and forever scarred. All because every volcano on Earth erupted at once.